There are two types of glazes that we're going to talk about right now, paint on and dipping, which is also pouring. Now, when we have our pieces, we need to make sure we follow the steps. Now, the first step is clean hands, right? If I had greasy hands right now, this could be a problem. Second, be careful, okay? We're not just like chucking crap around, or maybe we are. Third, don't chuck your stuff around. Okay, I have like 9 other mugs, so I'll be okay. Third, make sure it's fired. Okay, if it's not fired and you start to glaze it, that's a problem. Okay, now, what is my definition of a glaze? Do you remember? Started off, materials.
Materials?
Materials. That are, no, it's just materials mixed together.
To make stuff happen.
Applied appropriately.
To make stuff happen.
Fired to a specific temperature
To make stuff.
to get the desired result.
I was close. I was close.
Okay, materials, and remember it's a recipe, cookies. Okay, so the manufacturer, Amico, mixed up some materials, and I need to make sure that they are distributed properly. So I mix them up again. Then I apply it appropriately, which is about how many coats for a paint-on glaze? 3. Okay, not always, but usually 3. Okay, I fire to cone 5-6, which is 2200 to 2230 degrees, and we get the desired result, whatever they say it's going to be. Okay, now I need you to, we're going to take a little field trip back here. This is why I need drones. Right back here, what kind of glazes are these? They're under glazes.
Yeah.
Can anyone read that label?
Read the label on the bottle.
The bottle will say underglaze on it if it is an underglaze. Okay, let me explain that to you and why that's extra important this semester than ever before. So we've heard this term, supply chain issues, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? That is something that we have to deal with right now. It's just the way it works. Now, I normally order for our paint-on glazes, Amico Potter's Choice. Okay, and there's a bunch up here, and they're great glazes. I order glazes because they're stable, they look good, and they function properly, in that order. To order Potter's Choice glazes from my manufacturer right now is a 3 to 5 month wait. So when I called him up, I'm like, hey, can you order that in? He's like, yes, 3 to 5 months. I'm all, oh. So I ordered some. Okay, when are they coming? For next year. So, but they said, but Coyote, they're about 3 weeks out. And I said, oh, let's order a bunch of those. Okay, now, you seen this before?
Yes.
It looks just like this one. And up until now, it's been easy to tell them apart. Okay, you can tell them apart. There's 3 things that are going to be on here. One,
Square.
the square. That tells me it's a glaze. The words, cone 6 glaze. Underglaze. And I'm going to try to write on every lid, glaze. Okay, and you need to separate that in your mind, and you need to read the labels. And there's a couple of reasons why. If you put this on, this, and do not clear glaze it, it is not going to come out shiny. Now, let's talk about glaze or clay makeup. The firing schedule goes like this. Let's say that this is our bone dry piece, okay? It's dried and it's gonna start to get fired. When it's getting fired, it shrinks and it centers and it starts to go together, okay? And it shrinks about that much. Do you see that there's holes there still?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's this right here, okay? Now, when I put another glaze on there, it goes into those pores or those holes. Okay, so I put an underglaze on, I put a clear glaze on, and then I fire it again, and it goes tight, like this. Now, if I put an underglaze on here, and you don't communicate, or you don't know you put an underglaze on, and you put it up in the glazed pieces go here. Okay, it's going to come out, and it is going to be not shiny, right? Because it's an underglaze. Where we have shiny pieces, not shiny. You see the difference? Okay, so let's go back to this. So if bisque wears like this, and I put an underglaze on, and then fire it, it's now tight like this. There's very little pores in there anymore. And if you go, well, I'll just put clear glaze on it, where's the clear glaze gonna go? It's not holding on to anything but the surface, so that when it fires, it's gonna run. So you've got to read the label. If you don't know, come ask, okay? I want your pieces to be as successful as they can possibly be. So the square tells us it's a glaze. The label that says cone 5/6 glaze tells us it's a glaze. The lid tells us it's a glaze. But I found this one back here. Okay, so we've got to be paying a lot more attention. Now, as soon as, I like these glazes. Coyote makes great glazes. I really do like them. But I love the idea that the bottles look different. I really love that idea. So anyways, it'll be up here. So pay attention to that.
So wait. So we fire. So once they're dry, we fire them, and then after we fire them, then we put the underglaze and then the normal glaze on, and then we fire it again.
No. So we finish them, like a lot of you are going to turn your mugs in today. They dry. We bisque fire them. We pull them out. They come out like this, okay? It's glass. We are not putting underglaze on our pieces this time. We are putting these glazes on, or dipping glaze. And that they're standalone glazes, which means that's all you need to do to them, okay? Underglazes are good for spot colors, like very specific. I want red here and blue here. These glazes are good for all over colors and things like that, okay? Is that clear enough for now? Any questions up to this point? Okay, so if my definition is materials mixed together, applied appropriately, fired to a specific temperature to get the desired result. I come up here, I find the desired result. Smoky Merlot, it's a purple, okay? And then I go, how many coats? It's gonna be 2 coats. So I'm gonna come up here. I made sure that my piece was fired. And this is how I'm going to mix this up, because it's got to be mixed. I always loosen up my lid and tighten it back down, always. Then I put my finger on top and I shake it. Okay, if you do not loosen the lid and tighten it, if you do not put your finger on top, if that lid is loose and you go to shake it, that's going to fly off. This red is now going to go all over the place. 1, you just wasted about $20. 2, if it gets on you and you have nice white shoes, they're no longer white, okay, and they won't clean. So, make sure your fingers are on the lid, and we shake it like so. Then we have our piece, and how am I going to glaze it? And there's a bunch of ways to glaze it, and if you come up with a new concept on glazing, come talk to me, and we will go over why you could or could not do that, okay? 3 coats, that's what it said on the bottle, and we're going to go from there. So here's a concept. This was dipped in to here, then dipped in clear, the handle was wiped off, and then blue was painted. So there's 3 colors going on. Now, you could say there's 4, because where it overlapped, it's doing something as well. Okay? And that's one of the differences between underglaze and our standalone glazes is chemically, when they overlap each other, they're going to do something else. Okay, so we'll pass that around. This is an all-over glaze. It's a paint-on, and the handle was only 2 coats. Everything else was 3. So we got a little bit of variation there. This is an all-over, and I don't have this glaze anymore, but you can see where it breaks, it goes lighter. So when there's an edge or something that's sticking out, it goes lighter on this one, and then when it cools, it goes darker. And this is dipped in 2 different glazes, so we'll talk about that in a minute. So I started doing this one, and this has iron on here and here, and it has deep sea on here. Now I made the mistake of not waiting for my iron to dry all the way, and so I got a little bit of swirling going on. And once I get that, I stopped dipping my brush into my deep sea, and I washed it. And I could come and put another coat over that. It has 2 coats on it. I'll probably leave it. We poured on the inside. Okay. And now I just need to finish up this area with whatever. Okay. But anyways, we're gonna go with this one. So look at your piece and decide. With these that stick up, we can do it all as one color. We can do the back as one, this additive texture as another. We could do the inside as a color, the outside as a color. What we don't want to do is overlap them too much. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to dip this whole thing, then I'm going to wipe off that 4 and paint it another color. Okay? You good with that? Sweet. Because we want to make your pieces yours and have some fun with it. Now, before I do that, let's look at our glazes here. Okay, on our dipping glazes, you know where clear is, right? Up front here. So this one right here, I call it blue-yellow. And where it's thin, it's kind of this brown-yellow. And where it's thick, it's kind of this blue, smoky color. Okay, it's kind of a nice piece. You can't really control it. You just put it on, and where it's going to pool, like in your texture areas, it will go kind of that smoky color, and up on the top, it'll go a little bit more yellow. It's a great glaze. So that's this middle one. This one here is Tenmoku. Where's my Tenmoku? There's a bowl floating around right there. So Tenmoku, it goes on red, and it comes out. This is a dark brown burgundy that's shiny. It can come out, if your piece is really thick, it's going to come out a matte burgundy and not a shiny burgundy. If it's thin, it's going to come out more of a shiny burgundy. If it's thin and on the top shelf in the kiln, it's going to come out in almost black because it gets hotter up there. I don't take requests for kiln space. I just load them where they fit. So just kind of keep that in mind. But it's this bottom one, and it's a nice consistent glaze. So that's this one right here, Tenmoku. The one in back, bright blue. It is a transparent glaze, and it's that bottom. Okay, it's just a nice bright color. Okay, and then the one next to it is called yellow. It's the one on top. Okay. These are actually 2 different pieces thrown, and then I glazed them together on purpose. So that's those up there. As beginners, if it is not on top, you do not get to use it. I have other glazes down here. They are more volatile, which means they run more. And if you're not used to dipping glazes, I don't want you using them because you're going to ruin your pieces. 2, some of them are more expensive. This Tenmoku, 5 gallons, costs about $40. Okay. There's one down here called Shino. Same 5 gallons, $180. So there's a huge difference in cost. And you can ruin the Shino as well as you can ruin the Tenmoku. So we're just learning how on nice, stable, consistent glazes. And Tenmoku is a nice glaze. All right. So if it's on top, you can use it. If it's in the cupboard, you can use it. Okay, you're more than welcome to. So let's do this. So let's do, which one do we want to do? Blue?
Blue, yellow.
Blue, yellow. We'll do blue, yellow.
Perfect.
Okay, we're going to stir it. So, just a funny side note, the blue yellow and the bright blue can never be reproduced again because they are, well, the bright blue is 3 different blues that I had a little bit of each all put together, and so it's just what it is. The blue yellow is 2 glazes. I had one, then I had a little bit of another. This one wasn't reacting the way I liked it to. When I added this other, I actually put clear in there and just some random amount, and it stabilized it enough where it's now a good glaze. But I wouldn't be able to reproduce it. Kind of fun. Okay, where are we at? Right here. So tongs. These are the tongs. Okay, how many of you use tongs on your piece? A couple of you. We are going to reach in as far as possible. Okay, you do not want to hold it right here on the rim and dip that in. That rim is going to break. So as far as possible, I go as far as I can without touching my rim right here. Okay, and I'm going to hold it like a handshake. I'm going to dip that in and back out. Now, it is less than 3 seconds, so it literally goes like this. 1, 2, 3. Okay. You don't want to go down, 1, 2, 3. We don't want it in there for 4 or 5 seconds. So we're going to come in here, put it down, 1, 2, and 3. Pull that out. I'm going to let that drip. Now remember, red glazes stain. So if you push that in there too fast, it could spit with the air bubbles. I'm going to set it right here. I'm going to rinse these off. It did get on my hands a little bit. It will come off. My wife always knows when I've been glazing because I come home with stained red hands. That's the way it works. Okay, then we put the lid back on. But because that is like that, let's do an inside-outside dip or paint, and you choose. If you want total control, paint everything because you have total control. Now, how many of you would, you don't have to raise your hands. Some of you would consider yourself to be very particular or neat. As in, if you put a glaze on the inside, it would bug you that it was rolling over to the outside. Okay, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That is not how I work. I'm all about spontaneity and about drips and about random stuff. You don't have to be. So if you're like, I want an inside to be one color, the outside to be another. Total control, you can have with your paint-ons. Or you can do it like this. So I can come in here and pour that, and pour this around. Like this. Now some of you are going, that's not clean and crisp, right? Well, maybe maybe my demo sucks. Just kidding. So I'm gonna wipe it off. Now, and when I do wipe it off, a couple things. One, red will stain, but it's not gonna affect your next glaze. Two, anytime you wipe it off, you now need to let that sit for 30 minutes to an hour, okay? So for some of you, you might go, okay, I'll get my inside done, and I'll wipe it off, and I'll do my outside next time, okay? Spend some time cleaning that up. Or embrace the drip, and I'm fine with that too. I think a lot of you might find that as you go through life, the inconsistencies of decoration and architecture actually are more prevalent, or they're there more than you realize. You might think, oh, everything is crisp and clean, but then when you really look at it, there's some antiquing going on and some other things. Anyway, so I get that basically cleaned off, and then I decide, am I going to dip it down? Am I going to paint it on? Okay, you choose all of that stuff, right? Okay. Set that aside. This one here, I could leave it like that, and that would be cool because it's a blue-yellow, right? So I'm going to have lots of differences happening. Or I can come in and I can wipe this off. Now again, a lot of you will want consistent, easy to calculate results, okay? And a lot of what we're going to be doing is not that. So for me, I have all this stuff going on here. I wipe that off. The 4 has more in it. I could leave that, and I'm going to get some sort of a ghosting here. It's going to be slightly yellow, but not shiny, which might look really good. But I don't know for sure. Okay. So for me, I'm like, I'm gonna try that. Or you can come in, you can paint another glaze right over the top where I just wipe that off. See how you have choices, you just don't want to break the rules of 3 coats, 3 seconds, yeah.
With the paint on glaze, you have to do several coats, but when you dip it in, do you have to do several coats?
No, dipping is 1 dip.
Why is it different?
It has a different binder to it. So it binds in the thickness it's supposed to be, where the other one goes on in the thickness it's supposed to be 1 coat at a time. Yeah, good question. Okay, yeah.
So if you were painting on that floor, would you let that sit for like an hour?
Yeah, you should let that sit. And the reason you let it sit is because we've now wiped it, and there's water inside of there, and we want it to be dry before we apply it. I am going to do a paint on, just so you can see what that looks like. We'll pick this one. So, Smoky Merlot. Twist the lid, close it, shake it. Let's bring the camera over here. And for every project, there is going to be a whole bunch of directions we can go. And so your best bet is to come up with, I was like, where's my paintbrushes? Come up with your solution, and if it's not fitting into my parameters that I've shown you, come talk with me and we can talk you through it, right? Your project going home that looks as good as you can make it is my goal, right? It is. Okay. So, I'm going to come here, and I'm going to paint. Now, am I painting the whole thing? Am I painting the bottom? You kind of choose. I got these bubbles, so we're just going to paint the bubble area. Now, the great thing about these glazes is if they go on a little thin, a little thick, they'll still be food safe. And they still, for the most part, react well. So if you accidentally, and don't do it on purpose, but if you accidentally put on a thicker coat, so it's like 3.5 to 4 coats of this glaze, it should be okay. It's good, stable glaze. If you on purpose put on 6 coats, it's probably gonna run. All right, so there's 1 coat, and it's sitting there working to dry. I could put another coat down here of something else, another coat up there. I would finish 1 glaze and then move on to the other. Okay? Am I confusing everybody?
No, you're good. At least I'm good.
Yeah? It's okay if you're confused.
Ooh, I have a question.
Yes.
Do you have to use those paintbrushes like the ones you're holding, or can you hold it, or can you use the...
You can use any paintbrush you want. I'm a big fan of medium brush application. Just get that on there and get it moving. Spot glazing is not really what these glazes are about. This is about coating big areas quickly and moving on from there. If you come in and are like detail glazing, you kind of miss the point of texture and you've missed the point of these glazes. That's more underglaze stuff, and you can do that on your final project, your hand-built project. That's fine, you can be very detailed, but we're learning these glazes.
Wait, so the 5-day projects are final?
You have 2 finals, so you have 1 on the wheel, 1 hand-built. Okay, now, wiping off still, the bottom. Okay, you see that? You're going to, before I do that, let's put my lid back on. Please make sure you get them on correctly. Take the time, because it's going to be real annoying to you if somebody left the lid off and it spills on you. If it's you that left the lid off, that's a problem for someone else. Okay, so I have my piece and I need to clean off the bottom. Now, you can see this. A lot of you will do this. And then you scrape off your rim. Okay? Now, we have a solution for that. The first solution is grab a piece of foam, and the foam is right under this glaze table, right here, and you would set that there. That way when you push, it's not hitting the hard surface, okay? So that's a big deal. But if you do chip your rim, you see how quickly you can take that glaze off? Please wipe the glaze off of your projects. Nothing says I don't care about other people's time like you leaving your pieces unwiped. All right, so we wipe it, and we're looking, if I set this down, I can see a little rim of the white glaze all the way around. I don't want it to be touching the glaze, because if it did, and it fired, it's gonna swell down and it's gonna grab. So, do you remember when I said we cut these at an angle? This is one of those reasons. So we can, as it cuts under, we can see where we've wiped. It's a good thing. Okay. So I've wiped that. Now for you, that rim, okay, I don't know if you can see that, but you can see it, right?
Yeah.
See, there's white spots. That means they won't be glazed when we're done firing it. So you need to do something about it. Now, you could go over and mix the glaze up and just barely dip that rim in, perfectly acceptable. Usually what I do is I come over here and I find whatever glaze is close at hand. And I put a nice coat right on that rim. Is it gonna look exactly the way it was before? No, because it's a different glaze, right? It's going to chemically react differently. And then we get things like this. Okay, you see how that's reacted differently? So that's how I do things. You don't have to do it that way. You can be a little bit more particular. I want to say fastidious, but I don't know if that's the word that fits. Either way, that's on there. I'm not gonna paint this. I really wanna see what that comes out like with the 4 being more glazed, the outside being less glazed. I think it's gonna be pretty amazing. Couple of hints for you. Do not dip with your handle. It's gonna be a problem, fill that up. If your handle is not completely fired or not completely sealed, and you do this and you pick it up, it might break. So wait till it is completely fired. Oh, here's some other things. There's little tiny dots where the glaze is missing. There's like a 95% chance that the glaze will run to those spots. If it's a big hole or an air bubble, you can come over with a little paintbrush and just dab. Do not double dip this. That is way too much glaze.
What happens if you double dip it?
It runs.
It just runs.
So the glaze is a recipe, right? Materials mixed together, applied appropriately. They're saying if you mix this up properly, if you mix that up properly and apply it properly, it has enough stuff to hold on to it without ruining your piece or running. If you double that, it's now sitting, it's not really this far out, but let's pretend it is. This much will hold, double that, it doesn't have anything to hold on to, and it just rolls down, and it just keeps going. It's just like if I fired it too hot. If I fired it to 2800 degrees or 2280 degrees, that extra heat will make that glaze run further or stay molten longer, and it will run. So, yeah.
So wait, how do you get the inside and the outside at the same time? Or how do
By
you
dipping.
Just like, okay.
By dipping. Now, on this one, because I've started painting the outside, I could pour on the inside, I could paint on the inside. You choose what that looks like. If you want a bright yellow inside, we have a bright yellow you can pour on. And then you can wipe it off, and then you can do the outside.
Okay.
When it comes to yours again, if you're like, this is what I think I want to do, come find me. We'll talk you through it. It's not a big deal. If you were to put this, and this is ready to be turned in, it goes right here. Please don't shove people's work back. But if you were to turn this in, it's not glazed on the inside, it's not glazed on the outside, but that one strip, and you put it up here, I'm going to assume that's the way you want it. I'm going to just assume you want it for a pencil holder. Okay? It is not food safe if it gets fired. So, if you're not done glazing, so you should really click it and go, if I'm not done glazing, this does not go up here, it does not go here, it goes back on your shelf. Because that means you're in control of it. Okay? So if you're not done glazing with it, put it back on your shelf. You can do 1 coat, 2 coats, 3 coats, and then come in next time and do the rest of it. I have glazed something and let it sit and then finish glazing it a year later. And it's just fine. Okay? So, any questions on that? Okay.